Now, before we transition, I'd like to say to my co-MC, Marie-Angèle, Shumalik, you speak perfect Darija, the Moroccan dialect. Yalla, Safkumaya. Please applaud this talented lady. You know, I've got to have a comeback from Marie-Angèle. I know she probably has another one up her sleeves, but I'm ready today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we will now transition to our much anticipated panel discussion, a lively conversation that will explore the dynamic interplay between infrastructure, policy, and the future of Africa's economic corridors. It is my honor to introduce our esteemed panelists, Samaila Zubairu, President and CEO of the Africa Finance Corporation, a leader in financing and advancing transformative infrastructure projects across the continent. Please give him a warm welcome. And also with us today, we're delighted to have Denai K. Paoli, Senior Advisor for Partnerships for Global Infrastructure and Investment at the U.S. Department of State. And as a leader, she works at the nexus of public, private, and development sectors and brings a tremendous wealth of experience as well as a global perspective to Africa's development agenda. And with that being said, I'm going to transition right across the stage to engage with you. But first of all, let me say a very big welcome to the both of you, because a few days ago, you were missing in action here in Rabat, and for good reason. You were in Angola with President Biden, as well as the presence of, I believe, Zambia, DRC, and the Vice President of Tanzania, as well as many other global players. Congratulations to you and welcome. It's really a joy to have you with us here today. So I'm going to start first with Samaila. During the meeting with President Biden as well as President João Lourenço of Angola, you announced that you would be kicking off and actually bringing on stream the Lobito rail corridor, and that's going to take off in 2026. First of all, I'd like to say congratulations to you. What was your take on that event, and how critical, how important is it to the work that we're all doing here?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I'd like to start by congratulating my Egbon, President Adishina, for convening this forum again. And I remember the first time we had this forum in 2018. You know, at that time, the idea was to showcase African opportunity and to create a framework for partnership and collaboration amongst African financiers, as well as financiers globally, to showcase the good that is possible from Africa, to showcase the solutions that we have and create a framework for us to work together. And that has happened across several fronts. First, with the support we get from them in our business as equity partners, the loans we get, their support for our industrial park that we have built across several countries, the partnership that we enjoy with DBSA, you know, to co-finance projects. So, for example, on the Lobito Atlantic Rail, that we're financial advisors, they are part of the parties that we mobilized. With TDV, we have worked on several projects together. With Badia, they're not here. We have several projects. Afrexim, we collaborate across several fronts. ITFC, recently we just approved the transaction in partnership with them. So it is a partnership that is working. We have collaboration across each other, and we would continue to collaborate to do projects. So the Lobito Corridor, again, is another example of collaboration that we have between the USPGI, the European Commission, the African Development Bank, the governments of Zambia, DRC, Angola, and now the government of Italy, and soon the government of Tanzania. So this, like we've all mentioned, is not just about a rail corridor, it's about an economic development corridor that would showcase what is possible when leaders come together with a shared vision for prosperity. This is about helping show the prominence and the vital importance of Africa towards the energy transition that we're all embarking upon. I keep repeating it, Africa has significant resources. You need infrastructure to unlock that. The Lobito Corridor will unlock the supply chains for critical minerals, provide critical minerals at a lower cost, lower emissions, and provide vital inputs for integration into various supply chains, both in Africa, in America, in Europe, and other parts of the world. So this is a historic moment. I mean, the president, like you mentioned, was very glad to be part of this, and he was very glad, for the partnership that we have between the U.S. and Africa, and our promise of building something that is sustainable, for both continents. So this was a truly historic moment in which we demonstrated what is possible. We demonstrated the fact that we can build systems, when we collaborate together. We will reduce travel time, reduce inventory costs. So many benefits coming from this project. And we're very glad to be part of it.
Let me jump in really quickly here. You talked about the capacity to move goods, services, obviously, along this corridor. But beyond that, what are the plans to ensure that it's not just a corridor that moves mineral resources or whatever the commodities are from source to the ports and potentially outside of Africa, to actually developing along this corridor a whole ecosystem of industries that can add value to what it is that we produce and not just export? I'm really curious here.
So for us, we've always said that for Africa to change, we must structurally transform our economies. What that means is that we must capture and retain more value on the continent. And we have several initiatives that demonstrate that. So my early reference to the support that we're getting on our industrial parks speaks to that. We have focused on capturing and retaining value in Africa. In fact, the reason why this project is important to us is because we had earlier on, amongst the partners here, commissioned a battery minerals value chain study that demonstrated that it was far cheaper to produce battery precursors in Africa than anywhere else in the world. In some cases, it was 3 to 4 times cheaper to produce them in Africa than in the US, Poland, or China. So we already have the basis for doing this. Just that in the development of it, we realized that we need several things to come together. One of the things that we need to come together was infrastructure, and that's why we were keen to develop the rail. The other thing that we know is that anytime you do a project like this, there are several other benefits that come. So earlier in this week, we met with President Lorenzo, and he offered us an opportunity to build transmission interconnectors, from the excess capacity they have, to Tanzania and to the South African power pool. And I said to him that we need the capacity for the rail, that with this kind of capacity, we would develop the rail and would develop the industries there. So we are already developing the largest copper smelter in Africa, in DRC. We are already producing copper concentrates from that particular mine. We are already producing green copper. So industrial decarbonization is already happening in Africa. We refurbished a hydro dam to provide renewable hydro energy for processing the copper ores to concentrates and soon to copper anode. We are also supporting the production of copper sulfate. So we are focused on the processing of the minerals. We're not going to export raw material. I mean, some will happen, but the idea is that we'll reduce that over time. Our target is we would increase the amount of value created from maybe 10, 15% now to 60, 70% over time.
Awesome. That's really...
Also for the agricultural value chain, because that is already taking place now.
Well, Dr. Adeshina is in the audience, so you better talk about agriculture here. We'll talk about that in a few more moments. Somebody once said, and I say this with reference to those who questioned originally the purpose, the whole raison d'etre for the Africa Investment Forum. Why? And why is it necessary? Why are you putting all of these resources into this? But what comes to mind is, if not us, who? If not now, when? The Africa Investment Forum, represented by all of the partners here in the room, is an idea whose time indeed has come. So again, we want to say congratulations and thanks to the visionaries behind this dream. And I'm going to come next to Denai and say, again, welcome back from Angola, a successful outing. What does President Biden's visit to Angola say about America's current policy with regards to Africa's development and its active investment on the continent? And given the fact that we're going to transition into a new administration a few months from now, can the momentum be sustained?
Great, that's a lot of questions, so let me take it one by one.
We've only got so much time.
I know, exactly. But well, first let me start. Thank you for welcoming me back, President Adesina. It's great to see you. And it's remarkable to me, 1 year ago, we had just signed the 7-side MOU between Angola, DRC, Zambia, the EU, us, the African Development Bank, and AFC, naming AFC as the lead developer of the Greenfield Rail project, which really opens up this next phase of the Lobito corridor. And 1 year in, here we are in the boardroom. We've got a concession signed, we've got a feasibility study completed, but it really is hopefully an example of what can happen when we leverage innovative partnerships for scale to move really fast. So coming to your actual question, it was incredible to be in Lobito this week. President Biden was incredibly excited to be able to visit the port, see some of the rail investments that we've already made, as well as celebrate new commitments. We announced another $600 million in additional investments in rail and agribusiness and digital and mobile connectivity. And we met at this leadership summit, the first at the leadership level, presidential level, at a pasta factory at the Carinho facility, which is Angola's largest agro-processing, to really demonstrate that this rail, while anchored by the financing of critical minerals, really is so much greater than that. And when we think about adding in the investments across multiple sectors, it will add to greater than the sum of its parts. The PGI, the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, our approach has been to invest across multiple sectors at a time, and the economic corridor that we chose first to announce is the Lobito corridor here on the continent, which is really a demonstrative of our commitment to partnering with Africa. The vision for the Lobito corridor was an African leadership vision, and we came in to support it and get behind and help accelerate it and bring in more partners from across the G7. The organization of bringing in additional partners and being private sector led in the way that we are unlocking commercial capital for investments across multiple sectors really helps ensure that regardless of the changes in administration, there's momentum that will continue in sustainable ways. Broadly speaking, we have bipartisan support for this initiative, and we've brought in lots of partners to ensure that it continues and the rails and the trains run on time to break ground in 2026.
Thank you very much. And it's been said that globally there's about a $40 trillion deficit in infrastructure funding, and as much as 70 billion to 100 billion in Africa on an annual basis alone. What more do you think we can do in terms of the public and private sector engagement to accelerate development and investments on the continent? I'm sure you heard a lot of new ideas in Angola. You guys brainstormed a lot. What other new ideas are coming on the horizon that you see?
I think what's interesting actually, particularly about PGI, is we are a White House-led initiative, but our implementing team is at the State Department, which really recognizes that in order to move large infrastructure projects, you need the political will as well as the financing. We've held a number of investor forums, including our first one outside the US in Lusaka in February, and it really is bringing together the political leadership as well as the financing community to help de-risk large-scale investment. Ultimately, you need collaboration, you need communication, you need strong processes, but you need to bring in a number of different partners in order to be able to move projects quickly to ultimately impact people, right? The rail is only there because you can move goods, but you can also connect people. You create jobs. You really help accelerate the economic growth trajectories of a region. And it is really only through bringing in these diverse sets of partners, and often unexpected ones, that really will make the difference going forward.
Thank you very much. Well, I was going to, well, go ahead.
So I was going to just talk about the financing for this. So this is a public-private partnership that is going to be open access. So the initial studies indicate that we need 3 million tons to make this, actually 2 million tons to make this viable. And we already have secured about 500,000 tons. And that is just for outbound traffic. We know that there's significant inbound traffic. So this is a viable project. And the fact that we've signed the concession agreement means that this will get done. And we have sufficient capacity within this room to get it done. When we pull together as Africans, we will deliver this project. We're keen to have partnerships, but we will deliver this project. And in delivering this project, we would also create the framework and partnerships to deliver other projects. President Biden mentioned the need for mobilizing more capital into Africa. And truly, that's what's required. But in mobilizing capital to Africa, we Africans must take ownership of that process. We must first take the initial steps to do the risk and fund the projects, and then we can scale with partners. So we have agreed amongst ourselves that we will fund this project. We're not looking at just our balance sheet, but how we can mobilize others to work with us. At the African Finance Corporation, at the African Development Bank, DBSA, and all the partners in this room that have indicated interest in doing this project, we would not just invest our funds, we would create a framework to mobilize the pension funds in Africa and the institutional capital in Africa to invest alongside us. So with projects like this, we would bridge the funding gap for infrastructure by making this work, and we will make this work.
Thank you very much. Both of you sound very bullish and well-deserved so. I'm a little bit, I'm kind of curious here about how it is that infrastructure investment along the corridor will benefit rural and urban populations and not just facilitate inter-country trade. What are your thoughts on that, and what are the plans to ensure that the investments truly are inclusive?
So I'll give you an example. You know, anytime you work on a project like this, there will be several people that will find application of the infrastructure. And that application would generate ideas and opportunities for additional investments. So when we say that we want to mobilize capital, not just from our balance sheet, but from others, we're thinking about creating a tranche to mobilize commercial banks to participate. We create a tranche for them. We know that they are not able to take the kind of tenors and the risk that we typically would take on this as multilateral development banks, but we'll create a window for them. Creating that window for them means they have exposure to the project, and they can finance SMEs that will benefit from the project. So think about a rail terminal. Once a rail terminal exists, it means a certain number of people will always go through that. It means that local people can make food to sell to passengers. It means that people can come there and create a market. I mean, you've been to several train stations. They're all markets, you know, and that market is for the people that live within that society. So this is going to be an integrated development that will carry everybody along.
Thank you very much. I see that we have 3 minutes left on the clock. Both of you representing your different constituencies, the United States, AFC, but also representing all of the Africa Investment Forum partners. I'd like for you to share with the audience here what your biggest takeaway was. You were there in the moment with others, an exciting moment. What are your big takeaways? What is it that excited you the most, that really gives you hope in a new Africa emerging?
So for me, it was just the power of partnership, the power of collaboration, the fact that once we come together with a shared vision for prosperity, with a shared vision of how to overcome unemployment in Africa, with a shared vision of how to overcome poverty and inequality in Africa, and demonstrate that we have a strategy that we have already started to fund, we'll get partners to help us scale. Again, for me, I've always said that there is no global net zero without Africa. Africa has what it takes for a less intensive carbon future, and this project is going to bring it together.
Thank you very much. And Danae, your take?
Yeah, absolutely. To me, in addition to the shared vision, it really is the interconnectivity and the potential of when you bring together multiple investments across sectors at the same time. We had showcased Africell, a US-owned telecom company that is one of Angola's fastest mobile operators. We're helping them expand in Angola and the DRC. They're also partnering with Carinho, which is Angola's largest food producer, to expand mobile money to rural communities along the corridor. We have an American bridge company that's building bridges across rural sections of Angola that will help move some of those family farmers closer to the bridge, where they can expand storage alongside the rail and the investments that we're making there so that they can get their goods to process and back out. We announced the first food shipment from Carinho into the DRC to help expand food security and access to high quality food products. And so there really is just the interconnectivity of bringing together all of these different private sector companies that are making investments and then supporting that through these very larger group investment projects in core infrastructure to really accelerate the impact on citizens, rural and urban, across the continent.
Thank you very much for those closing comments. Danae K. Paoli, as well as Samaila Zubairu. Welcome back again from Angola. I just want to end this session with a short story. In 2017, Dr. Adesina called an early morning meeting of a senior leadership group, and he said he was sick and tired of the asymmetry of information about Africa, the risk perceptions, different narratives about the continent. And to change that, he was going to create, format, and partner with several global and regional partners to create the Africa Investment Forum. The deadline, 12 months. We thought it was all impossible. A number of us pleaded for at least 18 months to 2 years. He was insistent. He said 12 months and no more. The rest, as they say, is history. And it really is encouraging to see what has transpired since 2018 to where we are. I can only imagine where the Africa Investment Forum will be 10 years from now. To Dr. Adesina, to all of the Africa Investment Forum partners, and to you, our guests, we say congratulations, well done. And at that point, I'm going to hand over to my dear colleague and co-MC, Marie-Angèle Touré, as she takes us on to the next segment. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
On va remercier effectivement une fois de plus nos panélistes pour leurs interventions qui ont été riches et pertinentes.